They are some of the most challenging scenes that have been encountered by frontline officers, by wider emergency services, and most certainly by the public. In terms of the scenes in the street, they're unheard of in nearly all our cities, but especially a city like Plymouth, which is, whilst a naval city, predominantly an extraordinarily peaceful city. We can talk about Keyham as a key community within a city. We can identify our sub-communities in this committee down to streets and roads. So Biddick Drive is a community within a community, and that granularity was tested last night in terms of the resilience of that community, but also the courage of it. It was very uncertain times, and the community supported us unequivocally. It will be tested over the coming days, undoubtedly. There will be upset and anger, and we will stand side by side with our communities and the council and our MPs during that time.
Can you give me some idea of the scene that greeted your officers?
So the timeline, and there was, if I've confused, I didn't mean to.
I don't want to pin you down here to timings, but
yeah.
Just an idea of what they were confronted with.
So officers are originally called without firearms and are attending, then it comes out as firearms. All officers continue to deploy. The first officers on scene encountered the child that had been shot in the street with the adult using what is described as a pump-action shotgun. I won't expand on that, but I think most people can imagine what that was like for arriving officers. Further along Biddick Drive, we then have 2 injured members of the public as more officers arrived, and then they're pointing where Mr. Davison has gone. Further officers are attending, and then encountering a further murdered male and female, and then ultimately Mr. Davison himself, who's taken his own life.
How did it start?
It starts, we believe, with a domestic-related incident between Mr. Davison and a lady who lived at the premises. It's a familial relationship, but at the moment we're working with the family and want to make sure all the family know. But that then comes out onto the street. As I say, we don't know the motivation of Mr. Davison. In our society, tragically, we do live with domestic-related homicide, then suicide. We've had one recently within the force area of homicide followed by suicide, but we've never in my time had homicide followed by a rampaging firearms attack on random members of the public and then taking one's life. That is without precedent in my time as Chief Constable.
There were 2 people who were shot and injured, but there were others who witnessed some of those murders. How are they?
Traumatised, extremely traumatised. I think whilst we're trained, and we are trained to run towards danger and deal with it, that's why the Commission's made available for those who witnessed, and we've got specialist officers with them and liaison officers, and we'll make referrals if they wish. What was upsetting, I understand it in a digital age, that images were shared to people who've opened things on their phone not expecting to see what they found. And that's why you'll make the number available, but why the Commissioner said anyone can phone victim support. These are particularly traumatising images.
What do you know about Jake Davison?
We know that he's 22 years old. We know that Devon and Cornwall Police have a firearms licence granted to him. I can tell you that we have literally many thousands of firearms licence holders within the force area. They're regularly reviewed in legislation. But we do take firearms licences away from people when they come to notice the police or family members raise concerns, later to restore them once we're assured. That will form part of the inquiry. When was it granted? Was it granted correctly? Was it ever removed? Was it ever restored? And that will be made available to you, the coroner, and we're working with the Independent Office of Police Complaints on that.
Do you know yet whether he held a licence last night?
As I understand it, Martin, right now, he was still a licence holder last night.
How do you go about establishing motive? I mean, what are you doing in terms of investigating him?
So in terms of investigating him, yourselves, not least, already looking at his social media accounts. We'll be looking at any phone accounts, clearly speaking with his family members of the community who knew him, perhaps where he worked, building a life picture of Mr. Davison, looking at earlier life, any motivations or indications that we may have missed or could have been spotted. But I don't want to do the court of hindsight. We need to understand what drew him to attend we believe, a family member's home to take a life there, and then, most unusually, to go onto the street to do what he did. We're always so impressed when people go from call to arrival at an incident. Had this been anywhere else in the force area, the response time to firearms incidents in forces outside of major urban forces is usually in half-hour and 45-minute windows. A 6-minute response time is extraordinarily rare, and I believe it's perceived by the public to be the norm. And sooner or later, something might happen where that's not the norm. Last night, my officers, armed and unarmed, ran towards danger, at some point knowing firearms were there. British policing does that, and I'm extraordinarily brave of them, proud of them, no matter what comes out in the future. The British public should understand that in a 4,000 square mile geography, a 6-minute response time was extraordinarily professional, but in many ways extraordinarily fortunate in what were most unfortunate and tragic circumstances.
Do you believe that quick response time saved other lives?
We won't know whether Mr. Davison heard us, heard the sirens, whether he had seen. I don't know. That may come out. But no doubt we will discover in time. What I do know right now is that the people of Keyham and my officers and the responding blue light agencies were extraordinarily brave and courageous last night.